Good morning. Today I'm on Bodmin Moor in Cornwall and I'm going to visit Dozmary Pool, which is a small lake or tarn on the moor. There are a couple of stories associated with Dozmary Pool, one of them relating to King Arthur and the other one concerning a man named Jan Tregeagle. So let's go and have a look. And there you can see the lake, Dozmary Pool, just coming into view. I read somewhere it's about a mile in diameter, so it's not huge. Before I came here for the first time, I had an idea of a kind of windswept, desolate, isolated place. So it was a bit of a surprise to find that there's a couple of houses, very pleasant houses here on the lake shore. I don't know how old they are. I'd imagine by the looks of them they're not that ancient, but it's an oddly domestic intrusion into the setting and the stories that I'm about to tell. So let's start walking around the lake. And let's begin with the Arthurian connection. Frankly, it's a bit tenuous, but local legend has it that Dozmary Pool is where Sir Bedivere, one of the knights of the Round Table, returned the sword Excalibur to the Lady of the Lake when King Arthur lay dying. Now, it must be said that there are other places that claim that honour, including Loo Pool. I think it's Loo Pool, or maybe it's Low Pool, which is also in Cornwall, and probably more famously the River Brew at Glastonbury by Pompalis Bridge. And in any case, Dozmary Pool isn't near any of the supposed sites of Arthur's final battle, which was at a place called Camland. But regardless of which location has the best claim, let's pretend for a few moments that it happened here. I'm going to read you a passage from the version of the Arthurian legends by a writer called Roger Lancelyn Green, whose book was published in the 1950s, and that it was actually the version that I had when I was a kid. Lancelyn Green drew heavily on Sir Thomas Malory's version, which was the first version in English published in the 15th century. So it adheres to that original English version very closely. So I'm going to find somewhere to prop the camera up, and then we'll start. So just to set the scene, Arthur and his knights have fought their last battle against Mordred and his army. Arthur has been mortally wounded by Mordred, and most of his knights have also fallen. And Arthur is determined that before he dies, his sword Excalibur must be returned to the Lady of the Lake. So that's the cover of the Roger Lancelyn Green version of the legends of King Arthur. A beautiful cover by an artist called Lottie Reiniger. So, as I say, Arthur is dying after his final battle, and here's how Green describes it. Then King Arthur said to Sir Bedivere, "Now leave your weeping and mourning, gentle knight, for it is of no avail, and my time is short. But now, while yet I am with you, you may do me one last service. Take my good sword Excalibur, and go up over yonder ridge, and there you will come to a dark lake in the mountain pass. And when you come there, I charge you to throw my sword into that water, and come back and tell me what you saw." "My lord," answered Sir Bedivere, "your commandment shall be done, and I will bring you word at once of what I see." So Sir Bedivere departed, carrying the sword Excalibur, and as he went he looked at the sword, admired the precious jewels in the handle, and said to himself, "If I throw this valuable sword into the water, no good will come of it, only harm and loss." So when he came to the dark lake in the mountain pass, he hid the sword amongst the rushes, and hastened back to King Arthur, saying that he had thrown it into the water. "And what saw ye there?" asked King Arthur. "Sir," answered Sir Bedivere, "I saw nothing but the wind stirring the dark waters of the lake." "Then you do not speak the truth," said King Arthur. "Therefore go quickly and throw the sword far out into the lake." So Sir Bedivere returned again and took the sword in his hand. But again he thought what a shame it was to throw away such a noble sword. So he hid it once more and returned to the king. "What saw you there?" asked King Arthur. "Sir," answered Bedivere, "I saw nothing but the dark waters stirred by the moaning wind." "Ah, traitor and liar," cried King Arthur, "now you have betrayed me twice. Who would think that I loved you so well, and that you had been so noble a knight of the Round Table, when now you would betray your king for the value of this sword? Go again swiftly and do my bidding, for this long waiting puts me in danger of my life, and I grow cold in this chill night air." Then Sir Bedivere was ashamed, and he ran swiftly over the brow of the hill to the dark lake in the pass of the mountains. He came to the waterside, took the sword in his hands, and flung it as far out from the shore as he could. And as the blade flashed away in the moonlight, there came a hand and an arm out of the dark waters, the arm clothed in shining white samite, mysterious and wonderful, and caught the sword by the hilt. 3 times it brandished the sword on high, and then vanished with it beneath the water, and the lake grew dark and still once more. So Sir Bedivere came back to the king and told him what he had seen. "Now help me hence," said King Arthur, "for I greatly fear that I have tarried here too long." So that's the story of the return of Excalibur to the Lady of the Lake. I don't know whether any of you saw the Lady of the Lake make an appearance while I was reading that. Maybe she did. The other story associated with Dozmary Pool concerns a man named Jan Tregeagle. He was a real person and lived in Cornwall in the 17th century. He was the steward to the Earl of Radnor, and he collected rents and dealt with land disputes in the region on behalf of the Earl. Tregeagle's notoriety sprang from his execution of these duties, and he gained a reputation for greed and cruelty. After his death, all kinds of stories were told about him. One of them was that he had murdered his wife and children. Another was that he had sold his soul to the devil in return for worldly riches and success. So he came to be regarded as a kind of Cornish Faust. This is what the author Robert Hunt said about Tregeagle in his book Popular Romances of the West of England, published in 1881. "Certain it is that the man Tregeagle was diabolically wicked. He seems to have been urged on from one crime to another until the cup of sin was overflowing. Tregeagle was wealthy beyond most men of his time, and his wealth purchased for him that immunity which the Church, in her degenerate days, too often accorded to those who could aid with their gold or power the sensual priesthood. As a magistrate he was tyrannical and unjust, and many an innocent man was wantonly sacrificed by him for the purpose of hiding his own dark deeds. As a landlord, he was rapacious and unscrupulous, and frequently so involved his tenants in his toils that they could not escape his grasp. The stain of secret murder clings to his memory, and he is said to have sacrificed a sister whose goodness stood between him and his demon passions. His wife and children perished victim to his cruelties. Now, according to Hunt's version of the tale, as Tregeagle got closer to death, he was so fearful about his fate that he employed the local churchmen to conduct powerful exorcisms against the demons that were waiting to drag him to hell. These efforts were temporarily successful, and he was laid to rest in a local churchyard. But not long after his death, a land dispute which originated in some of Tregeagle's dirty work came to court. One of the defendants shocked everyone by calling Tregeagle as a witness, and his spirit form suddenly appeared in the courtroom. Unfortunately, the man who had summoned him didn't know how to get rid of Tregeagle once he'd given his testimony. Now that his spirit was loose in the world again, Tregeagle could once more be pursued by the devil's demons. So the churchmen came up with another scheme to keep the demons at bay. Tregeagle's spirit form was set to an impossible and perhaps eternal task, the notion being that this might eventually expiate his sins. And this is where Dozmary Pool comes into the story, because in those days the lake was believed to be bottomless, although that theory was disproved in the late 19th century when it dried out completely one summer. Anyway, Tregeagle was set to the task of emptying Dozmary Pool, using only a limpet shell, and to make it even harder, the shell had a hole in it. According to Hunt's version of the story, Tregeagle laboured at this task for many years, watched all the while by the devil who waited for his opportunity. And one night, the devil conjured up an immense thunderstorm. The wind and rain and thunder were so furious that Tregeagle couldn't stand it, and he fled from Dozmary Pool across the moor, pursued by a pack of demon dogs. Now, after this flight from Dozmary Pool, Tregeagle turns up at other places in Cornwall. He gains a brief sanctuary at a hermitage in Roach Rock, and then other impossible tasks are set for him, again to sort of fend off the devil and the demons. So he has to weave ropes of sand at Gwenver Cove and carry sacks of sand across the River Cobar. Now, some of these stories are probably ancient folk tales that predate Tregeagle's time, but have become attached to his name over the centuries. And Tregeagle haunts the Cornish landscape like no other figure. He's become a kind of all-purpose, damned and wandering spirit. His howling and wailing as he carries out his impossible tasks or is chased by demons has been heard all over the county. And a traditional Cornish idiom for a strong gale or violent storm is to say that it's blowing like Tregeagle. Well, there's certainly no sight or sound of Tregeagle's spirit today. It's very peaceful here at Dozmary Pool, just the occasional sound of a cow or a bird. And it's a beautiful morning. So that's it from Dozmary Pool. Thanks for watching, and have a great day wherever you are and whatever you're doing.